Hey, check out what I found at the garage sale, Brandon exclaimed, holding up an old, dusty NES cartridge. The label read Super Mario Bros in faded letters, the edges worn with age. His friend Mike looked up from the couch, curiosity lighting his eyes. Is that the original?
Yeah, man, can you believe it? Only $5.
Brandon wiped the dust off on his shirt and blew into the cartridge before sliding it into his retro gaming setup. The TV screen flickered to life, filling the room with the familiar tingle of the Nintendo startup screen. I can't wait to show you the secret warp zones. They settled in, controllers in hand, and Brandon booted up the game. The Mushroom Kingdom unfolded before them in glorious 8-bit splendor, the nostalgia thick as pea soup. They spent hours jumping on Goombas and dodging fireballs, the laughter and shouts of victory echoing through the apartment. It was a perfect throwback to their childhood. As they approached Bowser's castle, Brandon felt a strange tingle in the air, like the buzz of static electricity. The screen flickered, and for a moment, it seemed as if Mario's pixelated eyes met his. Mike barely had time to react before the game froze, the music cutting out abruptly. The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of the TV. What the hell? Brandon murmured, his thumb hovering over the reset button. Before he could press it, the screen flashed again, and Mario's iconic character turned to face them, a twisted smile spreading across his digital features.
You're next,
the game announced in a deep, unnatural voice that sent shivers down their spines. The game resumed, but the castle walls were now pulsing with an eerie red light. The music had changed, the cheerful tune replaced by a sinister melody that echoed through the room. The graphics grew more menacing, the bricks of the castle shifting and moving like living entities. Brandon's heart pounded as they reached the final boss fight. Bowser roared, and without warning, the screen flickered once more. This time, instead of the usual battle, the scene shifted to show Mario stepping through the television screen. The plumber's digital form grew larger, his eyes burning with a fiery intensity that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. You think you can kill me? The demonic Mario taunted, his voice echoing in their ears. Mike stumbled back, dropping his controller. What the? Panic surged through Brandon's veins. He bolted to his feet, knocking over his chair and sprinted to the kitchen. His hand trembled as he pulled open the drawer, his eyes locking on the handgun he kept for emergencies. This had to be some sort of prank, some messed up glitch. But as he heard the sound of digital footsteps approaching, the cold metal of the gun in his hand felt all too real. He turned, pointing the weapon at the advancing figure. "Get back!" he yelled, his voice shaking. Mario took another step, his smile twisted into a snarl. "You think you can stop me?" He raised a glowing fist. Without hesitation, Brandon pulled the trigger. The gunshot rang through the apartment, and for a moment, everything was still. But then, the figure before him grew larger, more terrifying. The bullet passed right through the digital monstrosity, embedding itself in the wall behind. "You're part of the game now," the demonic voice whispered, the room growing colder. "And you can never leave." Brandon's heart raced as he took aim again, firing wildly at the advancing figure. Each shot seemed to only fuel the creature's power, the walls of the room crackling and distorting around them, as is the very fabric of reality. was being torn apart by the game's malevolent influence. The bullet ricocheted off the floor, sending sparks flying and leaving smoldering craters in their wake. Mike had backed away, eyes wide with horror, unable to find his voice.
Brandon, what are we gonna do?
He stuttered. The digital demon took another step, now standing in the doorway between the living room and the kitchen. The air grew thick with the scent of burning plastic, and the once familiar sounds of the game had been replaced by a cacophony of unsettling digital noises, like the cries of 1,000 trapped souls. "We have to get out of here," Brandon said through gritted teeth, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. "Now." He took a deep breath and set his jaw, his eyes never leaving the monstrous version of his childhood hero. "I'm going to reset the console, and when I do, you run." Mike nodded, his eyes darting to the door, calculating their escape. As Brandon took aim at the power strip, his hand hovering over the switch, the creature grew bolder. "You cannot escape me," it hissed, its voice now a chorus of tortured cries. In one swift motion, Brandon fired at the power strip, shattering the plastic and sending a shower of sparks across the floor. The TV flickered off, the demonic figure vanishing in a burst of static. The room fell dark, save for the flickering of the emergency lights that kicked in, casting an eerie glow on the smoke-filled room. They bolted out the door, not looking back, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. The apartment complex was eerily quiet, as if the world had stopped to watch their terrifying ordeal. They didn't stop running until they were outside, gulping in lungfuls of fresh air. The cool evening breeze washed over them, a stark contrast to the hellish scene they'd just escaped. Panting, Brandon turned to Mike, the gravity of the situation setting in. "What the hell was that?" Mike's face was ashen. "I don't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we're not going back in there." The silence between them was heavy with unspoken fear. They had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding, a nightmare born from pixels and nostalgia. As they stood there, the distant sound of the TV turning on echoed through the apartment, the game's eerie theme music playing once more, louder than ever. The digital world had bled into their reality, and it wasn't finished with them yet. "We've got to find a way to stop this," Brandon said, his voice firm with determination. Mike nodded in agreement, the gravity of their situation setting in. They couldn't just leave it like this. The game had to be destroyed before it could claim more victims. They re-entered the apartment, the gun still clutched tightly in Brandon's hand. The living room was a mess, with a bullet-riddled wall and a smoking power strip. The game continued to play on the screen, the demonic Mario nowhere to be seen. Brandon approached the TV, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He had to find a way to end this, to banish the creature back into the hellish game world from where it came. He slammed the cartridge out of the console, the screen flickering briefly before the game's hold on their world weakened. But the moment of relief was short-lived as the wallpaper began to ripple and distort, the floorboards beneath them groaning. It was as if the game itself was fighting back, refusing to let go. "Cartridge," Mike said, his voice urgent. "We need to break it." They hurried back to the kitchen, the digital whispers of the game following them like a malevolent shadow. Brandon grabbed a hammer from a drawer, and together they returned to the living room, ready to face whatever horrors the game had in store. The cartridge lay on the floor, the source of the disturbance, and as Brandon raised the hammer, he could feel the power of the game pushing back, trying to keep its grip on reality. With a mighty swing, he brought the hammer down on the cartridge. The plastic shattered, and with it, the wallpaper snapped back into place. The floor stilled. The TV screen went black. The music cut off mid-note. The room felt normal again. The air no longer thick with the scent of burning plastic and fear. They had won this round, but the question lingered. What other dark secrets were hidden within the game?